Hi, everyone, and welcome to season 6 of Behind Your Eyes. And in this first episode, Carolyn is my guest. So, hi, Carolyn. Thank you for
Hey,
being
how
here.
are
And
you?
would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. My name is Carolyn Laura, and I do a bunch of different things. I have a bridal agency working with beauty and love behind the scenes. I also have a podcast and a course for deeper love called The Heart Story. And then I also do like some spiritual, intuitive business coaching for
Mhm.
aligned clients.
Nice. Well, I always start with the same question, which is sincere. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Been a lot going on lately, I'm sure, not just for me, but for everyone. Life constantly has its ups and downs and
Mhm.
input and output of energies and things like that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Especially the last years were kind of crazy like that.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned on your website that you've devoted the last 20 years of your life to personal healing and transformation. And I would love to hear what that was like for you, that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I was constantly seeking
Mhm.
a higher connection, a deeper connection, different parts of the connection, kind of all coming around full circle to getting back into the relationship with the divine and coming back into wholeness with myself, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
But I have explored many, many modalities and went down many paths of healing. Like I became a yoga instructor,
Mhm.
I became a Reiki master, I became a life coach, and I just wanted to keep expanding
Mhm.
the amount of knowledge I knew,
Mhm.
feeling like more healing I could do in myself and the more healing I could offer others as well.
And like you said, you were constantly just seeking for that connection. And was that seeking because you felt there was something missing, or was it more because you just had a real interest in growing?
I think both.
Mhm.
I think both in a way. I'm very passionate about personal growth and development and
Mhm.
being the best person I can possibly be.
Mhm.
And then also, I think there was a part of me that was still seeking, maybe from some parental dynamics where I didn't get my needs met and
Mhm.
trying to fill the space with this or that or different things and trying to find that connection that would ultimately make you feel whole again.
Mhm.
And it was a long process to find that wholeness and hold on to it and really learning what self-love actually means. Like it doesn't
Mhm.
just mean yoga, journaling, it's way more expansive than that.
Mhm.
And claiming the wholeness and then holding on to your own.
Yeah, and that's the journey, I think, of life, the most important journey to discover your true self.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
And yeah, like you said, that's not just meditating every now and then or doing a yoga session, but really like peeling all back all the layers that I think has shaped you, but maybe are conditioning or, well, like patterns that were actually not yours, but maybe your parents or
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so it's an interesting journey to peel those layers back. So I would love to know what, yeah, that journey looked like for you. How did it start for you to slowly peel those layers back for you?
One thing that's coming to me, I was always very innate with beauty, even from a very young age. So I was telling everyone what colors look best on them,
Hmm.
what clothes were most flattering, and really into enhancing just the outward appearance of how people's rooms looked or, hair and makeup, things like that. So
Hmm.
decorating and aesthetics.
Hmm.
And I did that for a long time, very, very passionately. And I was so passionate about it that it was like my art was being channeled from a divine source,
Hmm.
especially after I kind of perfected the craft and things like that. So after I had done many, many years of wedding work,
Hmm.
as a makeup and hair artist, you're energetically transforming as well. You're not just decorating, you're
Right.
bringing a beautiful energy up that's hidden sometimes or a little bit below the surface, and you're kind of,
Mhm.
bringing that to the front and center. One of my intuitive gifts is to really see people at a very, very deep level. And
Mhm.
sometimes when I was doing makeup and hair, I noticed that they were looking really sexy or very
Mhm.
alluring, but the insides didn't necessarily match what was happening
Mhm.
on the outside.
Yeah.
So I started digging deep, deep, and I'm a very deep person myself, and wanting to heal the inside to match the outside so the inner and outer beauty was reflecting. And
Mhm.
so that desire for others really reflected in my own life as well. And when I kind of started going down a spiritual path with the yoga and all the deep Eastern philosophies and this and that, I almost said, oh, I don't know. I don't know if beauty's right for me anymore, because
Mhm.
it's so opposite of, you don't need beauty, you have everything inside of you. It's very
Yeah.
oppositional.
Yeah, because it sounds like when you think of like deep spiritual work versus beauty, beauty can sound very superficial.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But when you mix the two together and you express yourself as a full feminine being, your beauty can, bring that energy alive.
Right. Exactly. And it's almost like giving yourself permission
Mhm.
to shine, you know? But it was a process for me of integration. So after I started really getting deep into the spiritual path, I almost wanted to leave my beauty artist behind. I was like, okay, that was the first 20 years.
Yeah,
Now I'm going to do something else. And I didn't see how they could be married.
right.
Um, Then I kind of got to a place where, just as you said, they could both be integrated, and I didn't have to try to leave this other part of me behind
Mhm.
to be this other part of me, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's a constant, like, taking off the layers of the onion, seeing who you are at this level, taking the part of you from the past,
Hmm.
integrating it all back together, and then maybe another layer comes through in your life, and you keep
Yeah.
changing, you keep developing who you are as a person and
Yeah.
aligning with your truth.
Yeah, it's beautiful when you get to merge several talents, even when they look very
Yeah,
differently on the outside. Because before I became a coach in self-healing, I was actually a journalist, and now I interview people on the topic of
yeah,
spirituality and mental health. So, yeah, you can get to merge the talents that you have.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because you don't know where the one talent's going to lead you.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
you're 25 years old and you're really passionate about whatever it is, at
Mm-hmm.
35 years old, you may have a totally different passion, but all those other years have given you skills to put
Mm-hmm.
in your suitcase to take further. Like your life's, set up this way for a reason.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned before that you take great pleasure in learning, but also being an educator. And uh, how is it important? Is it important for you to also teach what you have learned?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's where the wisdom comes from, is like transmuting the pain that
Hmm.
you've experienced, or transmuting the lessons, or even all the integration processes. And
Hmm.
then once you're kind of on the other side of that, to help others reach that level where you've attained.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I think, also one of the main lessons in life. Well, to me, at least, they are, because when I suffered from anxiety, I would hold on to the people that would teach me and had already gone through it and say, well, I've had anxiety and now I'm here. And so they would show me the way. So, and that would strengthen me so much that now it is my passion to actually do the same thing. And from what I've learned in that experience, to be like, okay, I've been there and you get to be here where I am now as well. To almost
Right.
show the light. It sounds a bit deep maybe, but yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, to show the light to others, like I can show you how it works and how I've done it, and hopefully it helps you to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like
Mhm.
they're able to see through your vision.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. And through that journey of yours, like that spirituality journey, finding yourself, and were there any like mental health struggles, or maybe even like beliefs, negative beliefs that you encountered that you didn't even know or realize were there?
Yeah, lots of different avenues I could go into with this. One was I was in a marriage and
Mm.
it was really interesting. I manifested my dream life on paper.
Mm.
And I had exactly the career, the business, the husband. It all looked the way that I was manifesting.
Mhm. Mhm.
And in the actuality of those experiences, I realized it wasn't aligned and it wasn't what I
Mm.
wanted. And it all kind of had to come crashing down.
Wow.
So when it was time for my ex to leave the home and the separation process was occurring, I felt like I was going to be really happy. I was like,
Right.
okay, this is a new free life.
Yeah.
I've done all this work. I'm ready to like expand. And I
Mhm.
think I felt like that for about a week. And then the reality came crashing down, kind of like a tower moment where you
Mm.
have to sit in the destruction. And
Right.
it was like, I don't want to be depressed. I want to be happy. Like my
Mhm.
spirit wants to be moving and doing things. And
Mhm.
um, but I just couldn't, I consider it like a low to middle grade kind of depression
Mhm.
where I was still functionable most days.
Right.
But other days I really just had to lay there. I was feeling all my heart energy. I was trying to allow all the feelings to come to the surface.
Mhm.
And I thought it was going to be about a month, 2 months.
Mm.
It was like 18 months.
Wow. Yeah.
So it was way longer than I had thought.
Mhm.
And I guess I didn't realize, like when you're losing a long-term masculine structure in
Mhm.
your energetics,
Mhm.
that you have to kind of restabilize all over again, in a sense.
Yeah, yeah, it's like a building and it's crumbled
Yeah.
to its sort of foundation, and you have to build it up from
Yeah.
that foundation back up again.
Hmm.
And you mentioned on your website that there are many layers of PTSD. And
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to hear a bit more about that.
This comes up for me at times. I'm not struggling with really depression at all anymore. Every once
Mhm.
in a while, I get pangs of anxiety or panic, but PTSD from traumatic experiences, there's some little person inside of me that has a hard time saying, here's my need,
Mm.
oh, and expect that that need's going to be met. Even though I've done tons and tons of work and I know the language, I know how to access the little child, I know all those tools, but still in some different sorts of vulnerable moments, I still feel like, oh, I'm not going to have my needs met,
Mhm. Right.
because of a lot of times in my life where I didn't, and
Mhm.
had to take care of my own needs, or even in situations where my needs should have been taken care of
Mhm.
by this or that. So that still has some PTSD flare-ups, and I feel like if I just have 1 or 2 seconds, I can say, okay, this is an old story playing out. If this is a trigger, this is from the past. This is not from the present. This is from the
Mhm.
past.
Mhm.
Just anchor my feet into the ground, look
Mhm.
at my surroundings, and like reclaim that space.
Mhm.
And then usually I can see the dynamic and have enough time to kind of like work through it, not overreact. If I don't catch it, it could be like an overreaction. And then I feel like this is pretty common, when you do have an overreaction, then you
Mhm.
feel guilt.
Yeah,
You're like, oh man, I overreacted
I
again.
shouldn't have said that, or
I
yeah.
just want to be cool and calm and collected. And here I am raising my voice and, you know.
Yeah.
So getting deeper into it, I kind of realized that that guilt is just a cycle that's unnecessary. I mean, obviously, you don't want to treat anyone badly, but if you have a PTSD response and there's trauma that's still there that needs to heal. It's
Mhm.
just a message that's coming up. This
Mhm.
still needs to heal. You need a different kind of boundary around this to protect yourself. Like, what are
Mhm.
your actual needs in this moment?
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because sometimes when an emotion pops up, the emotion isn't really what is your need, but there's like a deeper layer below it. If you're angry, maybe there's something that you feel just a disconnect, or you want to connect with someone and they don't want to connect with you, or they're being distant, and you express it as anger, but it's actually some disconnect and hurt.
yeah.
Mhm.
I was reading Nonviolent Communication. I read it a few times, but I read it again recently. And they had some really interesting reflections about anger. You're
Mhm.
never angry about what you think you're angry about.
Mm.
You're
Right.
always angry about the thoughts that you're thinking about that situation.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
like, let's say your just example was disconnection.
Mhm.
Then maybe I was thinking, nobody wants to connect with me,
Mhm.
or then I'm kind of in a self-isolated space
Mhm.
and then projecting that anger to that person.
Yeah.
But let's say your sister said, "Oh, I'm not available." You know, your sister loves to connect with you.
Mhm.
So you wouldn't have that same thought
Yeah.
of this connection that wouldn't feel the anger,
Mhm.
So it's really
Yeah.
interesting to look at like what the thought is underneath of the anger and
Exactly.
what the need and thought are, and then you have a handle on it.
Yeah, but usually we don't really take the time to acknowledge that and see like, okay, where did this trigger emotion? Why did this pop up? Why, what is it telling me?
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm. And I think it
absolutely.
really starts just with the awareness of, okay, I'm being triggered right now, or something is happening within me, that you just need to take a step back. But because we usually tend to let that hurtful feeling or that emotion dictate how we react to things, instead of taking a step back and be like, okay, what's going on here? What's actually going on here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
And I think if the same trigger's coming up over and over again,
Mhm.
there's potentially a place where the person's kind of still abandoning themselves.
Mm.
They're not taking their own needs seriously, like, you know, could be anything, but if
Mhm.
it keeps happening, there needs to be a more of a protective space around it.
Mhm.
And if people aren't respecting that, then they may
Mhm.
need to be removed from your direct environment so you can
Yeah.
actually heal.
Yeah, I think it's also difficult. Well, at least I felt like that for a long time, to set healthy boundaries for yourself with other people, but also even with yourself, to be like,
Absolutely.
okay, like, how's my energy doing? Do I need to do this work right now, or can it wait? Do I have to fill up my own energy tank for a bit, or meditate for a bit? And but yeah, it can be quite a challenging journey to even respect your own boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And
And
then
not
just
just
really
with others,
checking like
but
constantly, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And do you know how to find like inner safety and calmness when you're dealing with panic or PTSD?
Yeah, I do now,
Mhm.
absolutely. As long as it's not coming on like flash paper, there was a time where I was doing a lot of intuitive work, a lot of third eye opening. And obviously your partner is usually closest to you. Your
Mhm.
partner and your family dynamics kind of have the easiest access to
Mhm.
hit your wiring.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so when I was really, really sensitive, I didn't have as much of a buffer. And
Mhm.
then I realized I just had to rest, take it easy,
Mhm.
my boundaries, and um, go forward that way. But otherwise, if I have a few seconds,
Mhm.
I just tap into my body. I've had to do inner child work many, many times where
Mhm.
I hold my inner child and I say, I've got you. What do
Mhm.
you need? And just from old hard experiences, like if I tapped into her, she might be laying on the ground crying. Like
Mhm.
she just feels like she can't get up.
Right.
Then I would go to be my own inner child's mother and like, let
Mhm.
me help you sit up. Here's some water. And like I'm doing this all in my mind, you
Mhm.
know? Let me hold you. What do you need? She might just say, I need just to be held. I need to know that I matter.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of hear these young stories where
Mm-hmm.
your needs weren't met and reparent from that place. Another thing is that I find really helpful if I get really charged up with energy,
Mm-hmm.
just to go outside and have my feet on the earth and exchange energy with the earth.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fast and so effective for
Mm-hmm.
if my anxiety is rising.
Right.
Also for anxiety, like I have a visionary thought process. So sometimes I'm like so in the future and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, how's this gonna happen? I don't know, and then when you get to the future, usually you don't even have the same problems that you've been worried about all along.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, by the time you finally get to the future, you actually have a whole suitcase of the tools that
Mm-hmm.
you've cultivated throughout your life to get you through whatever's necessary in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But often, if you're thinking about the future, just getting back to the present
Mm-hmm.
and focusing on my breath can be really helpful as well. Like I
Yeah.
have everything I need right now.
Mm-hmm.
I am here right now.
Mm-hmm. And in that healing journey, how essential is it to have a good connection with your body?
I think it's really, really important. I think if you don't, you're going to find it in the body sensations, you're going to find it
Mm-hmm.
in illness. Um, if aches and pains are coming up, it's usually your body trying to relay some sort
Mm-hmm.
of message to you,
Yeah.
or even like how your body's responding to different people's energy when they're in your presence. Like, is your stomach tightening and closing
Mm-hmm.
down? Is your throat small? Are you feeling small? Are you feeling safe to be expanded? And
Mm-hmm.
just really noticing how
Yeah.
you're responding.
Because your body is constantly sending you messages, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think, yeah, that's why it's so essential to actually listen to those messages instead of thinking, oh, I have a cramp here, or I'm sure I'm getting sick. And like, yeah, there's a story behind it, the reason behind it. Your body is trying to tell you something here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. But
And I think,
how, yeah, how do you try to connect more to that? Do you have like a favorite way of self-care or self-love techniques to strengthen that?
yeah, absolutely. I take Epsom salt baths every single day. That's
Mhm.
one way. And I used to work for network news, so like Fox and CNN, and I
Mhm.
was doing hair and makeup. And like I mentioned, there's like a lot of transmuting energy
Mhm.
happening. Or even when I was doing weddings, like a lot of energy I'm taking in from the environment like a sponge.
Mhm.
So the Epsom salt bath, I did it every day, sometimes twice a day if I needed to. Sometimes I was sitting there for 2 or 3 hours
Yeah.
and really soak off all the energies that I could.
Mhm.
So that was one practice that I've done long term. Also, if I'm moving, I like to work out, but it doesn't do the same thing as just straight up walking. If I take a long hour or mile and a half, 2 mile walk, my body feels really good. It's like a moving meditation
Mhm.
and moving all the energy through.
Yeah.
Um, and just paying attention to the small sensations that I'm feeling. And, like your mood can change so rapidly,
Mhm.
like you're like getting ready to leave the house and everything's fine. And then you get some email that's frustrating and
Mhm.
your mind gets kind of wrapped up around that. And so
Yeah.
just constantly like coming back to the present with the signals that your body's telling you, I think is really
Mhm.
helpful too. And taking care of them rather than pushing them away.
Mhm. Yeah, because I always think like when you try to push certain emotions or feelings down, they come back up even faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so try to deal with them as fast as you can.
Yeah. And like just be on top of it. Like
Mhm.
if you're suppressing things,
Mhm.
um, you're not really suppressing anything. Like it's still there and you're still
Yeah.
going to have to deal with it. And you're just
Yeah.
compounding things. So
Right.
dealing with it as it comes up and day to day, I think is a really good method that
Yeah.
I like to use to keep myself healthy.
Yeah. And are there any foods that can trigger anxiety if you know?
I love coffee
Mhm.
and it's a weird psychological response. Like to me, psychologically, coffee is comforting,
Mm.
even though to your nervous system, and I have an anxious nervous system, it may
Mhm.
not be comforting.
Right.
So Sometimes I'll drink a second or third cup of coffee and I'll feel my body like, oh, but in my mind, I'm still telling myself, this is comforting you. I'm
Yeah.
working on that programming, but if I have cheese or dairy or sugar, a lot of those,
Mm,
my system gets more off. If I'm having more fruits and vegetables, more potatoes, potatoes are extremely grounding.
mm,
So if I have anxiety, I will try to eat more potatoes. Or if I feel ungrounded, I'll
mhm,
definitely go to potatoes as one of my go-tos.
mhm. Yeah. Is it like fair to say like, okay, foods that just literally come from the ground are
Yeah,
more grounding?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know that when I eat too greasy or too spicy, woo, that's not good for my for my
Yeah.
system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That
And like
I
the
find it
spicy,
fascinating because there's such, of course, a strong connection to the gut,
yeah,
mind and gut connection, and that, yeah, that's fascinating to me how that works and how that affects your brain, and yeah, how it can trigger anxiety and panic and just really strong feelings.
yeah.
I never realized the power of it.
Yeah, definitely. And like if you're already feeling a lot of fire energy and
Hmm.
then you're having spicy foods, you're literally increasing your fire nature, you
Right.
know. And if you're ungrounded too,
Hmm.
then kind of like a fiery explosion.
Hmm. Yeah.
But also I think you know, synthetic artificial flavoring has some sort of like it makes you a little bit more moody, I think too. And I think so
Yeah.
does a lot of gluten.
And sugar.
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that I'm perfect, but with my
Yeah.
diet, I try to minimize those things as much as possible.
Hmm. Yeah, because it has such a strong impact on us, but we tend to, of course, ignore because we love to have, that rush of when you eat a chocolate bar, for instance, or the coffee, and you're like,
Yeah,
oh, you want to live off of that rush for a second or a few
yeah,
minutes, whatever it is.
yeah,
So we tend to ignore those signs, but yeah, I like I said, I'm not a saint either when it comes to dieting or anything, but when you get to know what your triggers are in that way, then you definitely can be a lot more careful about what you consume.
right,
And I
right.
think also consuming is not just food, but it can also be, what you watch on TV or on the internet, and that you also are more aware of what you consume in that way, of course.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
It makes a
Because
big difference.
yeah, do you think that also when you watch the now maybe the news or even just social media and you see, well, there's a lot of nasty things going on, of course, in the world, and how I'm easily affected by that, and that can cause quite a lot of emotions in me. So I really have to distance myself from it, and I think that can have quite an impact as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, I worked for the news for a long time.
Mhm.
So I was constantly in this, everything's an emergency
Mm,
environment.
right.
And that's when I would go home, I'd have to take a long Epsom salt bath. There'd be no way to energetically feel free of all that. Since
Hmm.
I stopped working for the news about 3 years ago, I don't watch the news at all.
Hmm.
If I'm at the nail salon or at somewhere where the news is on, I'm almost like, wow, I can't believe I worked in this high stress environment for
Mm,
so long.
yeah.
But it's constant bad news, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I think it really, really makes a big difference on what you're filling yourself with, and the more conscious and aware you can be of it,
Mm-hmm.
the more pure and clean your psyche is going to be,
Mm-hmm.
and like your whole vessel, your whole human vessel.
And does that also make you more vulnerable or susceptible to those negative energies? Do they affect you more, or are you more able to shield them?
I think from my experience when I worked in the news, you almost don't know what's real and what's not real. And
Mm-hmm.
you're in a constant state of overthinking, worrying about all these things that you have no control over.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't even know what's true.
Right.
It's like, I don't know. I guess I'll trust what's on the news.
Mm-hmm.
But like I've seen it firsthand. you can't trust everything on the news.
Mm.
I mean, I worked in the environments.
Right. Yeah, that's where the term fake news, of course, it came from recently. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, what is the best advice that you were ever given?
To treat yourself like you're your own best friend
Mm.
and not outsource that to someone else,
Mhm.
because humans are infallible,
Mm.
and they may give you some of your needs met here and there, this and that, but
Mm.
ultimately you have you, and you're
Yeah.
the one that's responsible for taking care of your needs. Everyone else is the icing on the cake.
Oh, yeah. So true. Self-love is what comes first. Should come first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, my final question is also always the same one, and that is, when are you at your happiest?
I'm at my happiest when I'm creating.
Mm.
Also when I'm like creative directing or putting together a new project, helping to teach people, inspiring people.
Mhm.
I also find a lot of happiness back to where I started, like doing beauty
Mhm.
or doing photo shoots and things like that.
Mhm.
So creating.
Yeah, a creative
Mhm.
soul.
Yeah. Or
Well, thank you.
traveling or
Yeah, traveling,
adventuring. Yeah.
of course. Traveling is also for me a kind of learning and growing experience,
Yeah, me too. Absolutely.
especially when you get to travel alone.
Yeah, and that period that I mentioned after I left my ex and he left the house and I was kind
Mhm.
of working through all those hard feelings,
Mhm.
I traveled to every single creative city that was on my radar alone.
Oh,
And I
really?
would just book a nice hotel, maybe like a few Airbnb experiences, like I might do a photo shoot and I
Mhm.
just shopped and ate and lived life to the fullest in
Mhm.
my own independent, free self. And it
Brilliant.
was so, so healing for me to experience that.
Mm. I already feel healed when you when you say that. Well, thank you so much for today, Caroline. It was such a
Yeah,
great
absolutely.